Alright guys, so now we're going to be making a bedroom, and I searched up bedroom on Pinterest. So we're going to be getting some ideas together, and we're going to be making the whole thing together, right? All the creative decisions are going to be made in real time. So let's first open Blender, and let's first create a basic sort of a basic shape for the whole scene. Just delete everything, and I'm going to be creating a new cube. I don't know why I just deleted a cube and created another one. You can obviously use the default one as well, but yeah. Anyways, all right, so I'm just going to be moving this up. I held Control on my keyboard to snap it to the to this axis, and apart from that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be sort of setting the height of this to something like 2.7 meters. If I just go ahead and search average bedroom height, and it is around like 2.4 meters, something like that, right? So I'm just going to be setting it to the dimensions. I'm going to set the Z dimensions to, let's say, 2.5, and it is going to go a little down. I'm just going to be moving this up, GZ, and then snap it, although the snapping is not working the way we want it to. So I'm just going to be eyeballing it. Something like that should be good, right? So now our height has been set properly. Now we can go ahead and lock the Z-axis. So I'm just going to be going to the scale, and I'm just going to be locking this Z-axis, so that now if we scale it up, you're going to see that it's only going to scale up in the X and the Y axis, right? And not in the Z-axis. So I'm going to scale it up something like that, just eyeball it for now, and then we can obviously make adjustments later on, right? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be creating a camera first. Now the reason why I'm creating a camera first is so that we can have a wider sort of a wider what do you call that? It was called, if I just go here, yeah, we can have a wider focal length, and that's going to give us a wider field of view, right? So I'm just going to be going inside the camera, and let me just go to the view, this view tab, and let's just lock camera to view. And now what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to be going inside the house, and now this focal length, I'm going to set it to something like 15, actually not 15, maybe 20. Yeah, so what this is going to do is that it's going to make the room look a lot bigger, and it's going to give us sort of like a phone perspective, like we're taking a picture from a phone, right? So we're going for that sort of a look. Obviously we can adjust it later on, but for the editing purposes, for the creation purposes of the scene, it is ideal for us, right? So I think that is perfect. Something like that should be our frame for now. And now we can just save the project. I'm just going to save it, bedroom ss new, save it, right? So now we can just start to add the assets. So I'm just going to go back to Pinterest, and oops, my bad. And in Pinterest, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be getting some ideas from here. Yeah, so maybe we can just start with adding a bed. So I'm going to be using BlenderKit again for this bed. And so you can just go to BlenderKit, and then you can, if you don't have BlenderKit, you can simply go to BlenderKit.com, and then you can download BlenderKit from here. It is free, and you can follow these instructions. They even have a video tutorial. You can just follow these instructions and you will have BlenderKit downloaded, right? So once you have that, you can just open it, and I'm just going to search for bed, and in the search filters, I'm going to go with free first, so that we only see because we only need free assets, right? So that is perfect. I'm looking for a more fancy bed. How about something like that? Never mind. Yeah, obviously now, oops, I accidentally misclicked, so I'm just going to be canceling this download. Yeah, I mean, obviously this comes down to your personal preference, and it depends on what kind of scene you're creating. So just be sure to select a bed which you think looks the best in your scene. I would recommend you not to copy mine. And let's say if you don't like any of these beds, what you can do is you can simply go to the internet and you can search for bed 3D model. And then you can just go to any of these websites: TurboSquid, Sketchfab, Free3D, and CG Trader. I don't know about the rest of these, but yeah, the ones which I mentioned are free, are basically safe to download models from, right? So I'm just going to be downloading one from here. I'm just going to be looking around to see if I find something interesting. Let me try the other websites, Sketchfab. Let's see if we find something interesting on Sketchfab. Generally, Sketchfab has more stylized models. So I don't think we have anything to get from here. How about CG Trader? Generally, CG Trader has Probably the best models generally. But many of them are paid as well. So yeah, it really depends on what sort of look you're going for. I think that is something interesting. Let me just go with that. Apart from that, how about this one? This is pretty cool. That is pretty cool as well. You know what? I'm gonna go with that. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. Or maybe this one. Yeah, I can't choose. I think this one is better. But obviously it comes down to personal preference. I would recommend you to not copy the same exact layout. I would recommend you to come up with your own ideas. And let me just go back. And yeah, the credits for this model goes to this guy, Rami0069. And yeah, so all the credits go to this guy. However, this model is free to use, so we can use it in our projects. And I'm just going to be closing all these tabs while we wait for this to download. Alright, so I did try to download this. However, the problem with this is that this is only available in .max format, the Autodesk 3ds Max format, which we cannot unfortunately open inside of Blender, so we cannot use this model. So I did some searching and I just found this model on BlenderKit, this one right here. So I'm going to be using this because I think this looks pretty good. So I'm just going to be using that. You can of course download any other model from the internet, but make sure that it is available in .fbx format or .obj format or .blend format. Blend format is obviously the best because that's just a native Blender file. So I can just go ahead and import that. Now it is imported. You can see that it looks pretty good. Of course, the size is a little too large, so I'm going to have to reduce the size a little bit. You can see that we have this modern bed in our collection. So I'm going to be selecting this object. Let me scale it down slightly, just a that bit. RZ to rotate it in the Z-axis. I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees. And let me just go inside my camera and place it properly. Now this model is pretty high poly. It has a lot of polygons, which is good for your final results. Of course, however, of course, it is not good for speed and performance. So Blender is gonna lag a little bit, but I think that should be fine, right? So that is our bed, and now we can move on to the next thing, which is going to be, if I just open up Pinterest, what should we add next? Maybe we should just add side tables, right? So I think I need to add like a simple side table. I was thinking of this originally. However, I can just simply search for side table and let's see other options as well. Maybe something like this. Of course, this comes down to your personal preference, but what I'm going to be using is actually I think this one is probably the best one. So I'm just going to go with that, because the other ones are not looking that good. Now the problem with this is that this side table comes inside the modern bed collection. So I'm just going to be dragging it out. Let me just drag this out of this collection as well, so that we can easily separately move them and our scene stays organized. So with that selected, I'm just going to be scaling it down. G, Shift, Z to move it in the X and the Y axes. And then I'm going to be rotating it. RZ, 90. I'm just going to be rotating it slightly off, slightly unevenly, so that it looks a little more realistic, because obviously in real life nothing is just perfectly 90 degrees, right? So I think that should look pretty good. Yep. And now what I'm going to do, instead of duplicating this for the other side, I'm simply going to add a mirror modifier to this. With this selector, I'm simply going to go to the modifiers menu. If I just select this, and if I just go to my modifiers menu, and if I add a modifier, mirror modifier, and now the mirror object is going to be this, and axis is going to be X is fine, and you're going to see that it is looking pretty good. So now we have the side tables ready as well. Now let's move on to the next thing which we can add. You know what, maybe let's add a rug or a carpet, something like that. So I'm just going to be searching for carpet. Now obviously all this comes down to your own creativity, and I would recommend you to spend some time with this and just think about what you're trying to make and what's your like target consumer, right? I think that should be fine. So for example, if you're making a room which belongs to, let's say, a 15-year-old, then obviously you won't add things which are super mature, right? But if you're making a room which is for, I don't know, let's say a 40-year-old, then obviously you're going to add some books and stuff like that, you know? So just be sure to have a clear idea of what you are trying to make. -90, and let me place it something like that. And right, so I think we need something to put in front of this bed right here. So we can either put some chairs, or we can put like if I just search for, yeah, one thing which we can do is that we can search for bedroom, if I just spell it correctly. And now it's going to show us everything which is related to a bedroom, right? So we can just simply get ideas from here. And yeah, so that is a good option. Let me just add this thing right here, this TV set. However, this is going to be on the other side, so it's not going to be visible in this frame. However, if we were to make an animation, or if we were to make multiple renders, which we probably will, then we can see that as well, and it's going to look pretty good. By the way, if for example you are moving your camera, it's not moving, it's not orbiting around a specific object which you want it to, just hold Alt on your keyboard and press your middle mouse button, and it's gonna reset to that. So for example, now I can move it, I can orbit around this TV set. For example, if I want to orbit around this bed, or maybe the side table, and it's not working correctly, I can just simply hold Alt and mouse button, and now I can orbit around this side table. So you're gonna see that it's a pretty helpful and useful tip for you guys. Now let me press RZ, something like that. -90 should be good, and GX, and something like that seems to be good. Maybe move it a little forward, and that should be good. Perfect. So apart from that, now we can move on to adding some chairs or something like that. Let me just search for let me just look for something good which is here. We can, on that wall we can probably add like a bookshelf or something. I'm just going to search for bookshelf, and that is way too empty. You want something which has some books as well, or maybe we can like separately download a books model and then we can add those. So that's an option as well. Yeah, I guess I'm just going to do that. Let me just download this one right here, because this looks pretty realistic. Or maybe, yeah, I'm just going to download that because it is simple and realistic, which is exactly what we were looking for. And I'm just going to select this, but first just bring that collection out of the TV set collection, and then I'm just going to be rotating it 180 degrees, and I'm just going to be moving it back. So G Shift Z and move it right there. Now we might have to scale it down in the y-axis so that it becomes more flat, and move it back a little bit. Something like that should be good. Alright, so I kind of have mixed feelings about this. Maybe we can scale it up like that, or maybe we can scale it down in the z-axis, something like that. Alright, so let me just try to add some books in this. If it looks good, then we're going to keep it. Otherwise, we're just going to get rid of it. And so I'm just going to download that collection of books and just download it. Right, so if you have that here, right click, select, and now let me just go inside my camera, and I'm just going to be moving it right here. Let's move it up in the z-axis, something like that, and then we can rotate this like that. And then we can, let me just go to my side view for this. Let's press Alt Z on my keyboard so that we are inside the X-ray mode and we can see clearly what's going on, and that should be good. Of course, I'm gonna have to move them up slightly and bring them forward. That seems to be good. Perfect. Let me move it down also. GZ, something like that. Right, we can obviously duplicate them again, and we do have some other book collections as well. So let me just add this one, because the more variety we have in our books, the better it's going to look. Otherwise, it's just going to look repeated and it's not going to give us that realistic effect. Right, so there's that. And let me just add this. Let me move this down. Select objects, G Shift Z, move them up, and I'm just going to be adding two of them for now. We can add later. We can add more later on if we want to, but I think for now this should be fine. And are they grounded? Yes, they are. Right, perfect. So we are done with the books for now, and now let's move on to the next step, which is going to be, let's add some paintings back there. So I'm just going to be searching for painting, not paintings. Let me just search for paintings, painting. And let's add something like that. Let's add that abstract painting, because the kind of vibe we're going with this scene is somewhat nerdy, because that person is reading a lot of books and he likes abstract paintings and stuff like that, right? So you have to create a character in your mind of what kind of person you were building the interior for, right? And you can obviously get inspiration from here as well. Yeah, we're gonna add some plants as well, because plants do add a lot of realism to your interior scenes. So I'm just gonna add them as well. And move it up, something like that. Let's get out of my camera and rotate it like that, 90 degrees, and rotate it in the y-axis, 90 degrees as well. And I'm just going to go to my side view, X-ray mode, and place it like that. Right? Let me just do that. Perfect. I think that looks pretty good. However, when we come to the texturing part, we can maybe change the painting inside of this frame, or maybe change the whole painting. We obviously do have options later on, but for now I think it looks pretty good. Right, so after that we can maybe add, let's just search for some options. Yeah, maybe we can add some chairs right here. So I'm just going to be searching for chairs. Maybe we can add one right there and one right there, but it really comes down to your personal preference. I think something like that should look good. How about that? You can go for something simple, like maybe this, or maybe a simple sofa, but I think that should look pretty good. Or maybe we can add a desk right here as well. That is another option which we have. And then above the desk we have a window or something like that. So yeah, actually let me just do that. Let me just search for desk. I'm gonna add a cool desk, maybe something like that. I think this one is pretty good. Working desk. Let me just move this. Oops, select it and move it. Place it right there. We are gonna have to scale it down a little bit because it's way too congested. Or another thing which we can do is we can just select this cube and we can go into edit mode, select this face right here, and we can then move it out a little bit in the y-axis so that we create more space in our room. I think that should be the better option. And I'm just going to select this working desk and make sure that this is the front side. We can obviously adjust it later on. Right, so that should be good. And now this chair right here. Let me go inside my camera and select this chair, rotate it like that, and move it somewhere there. Scale it down slightly. I think that should be good. Although I kind of have mixed feelings about this, so we might end up changing it later on. We are gonna have to get another chair for this desk, which is going to be, I want something simple but also sort of like an office chair vibe. Maybe something like that. I think that should work. We can add something like this, but this looks way too formal, and I don't think anyone would have a chair like that in their bedroom. So I'm just gonna go with a simple one. Let's go back to Pinterest and let's get some ideas. So the lighting, I'm gonna do it entirely. I'm gonna have it entirely sunlit. So we're gonna have a large window, which is gonna send us light from outside, and we're not gonna bother with interior lighting. Although we might have to add some area lights here and there to sort of fill in the gaps. But yeah, mostly it's gonna be done by the sunlight. So you know what? Let's start with. Actually, one thing which I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be adding a guitar. So just a simple little guitar, maybe something like that. I think that was better. However, I mean, right. Perfect. So now we can move on to, let me first get some inspirations. Yeah, let me add a lamp somewhere. And yeah, we also have to add the plants, right? So Let me just move this guitar right there. Now all this is super easy, to be honest, because you don't really have to do anything, right? You just have to simply import the models and just place them according to your wants. And that's the beauty of Blender and BlenderKit, right? Because obviously otherwise you would have to model everything from your own. Otherwise you'd have to model everything yourself, and that would suck. And it would take a lot of time, right? So let me add some plants. Let me first add a lamp, and then we're gonna add plants. So I want a very thin and simple lamp, which we can add. How about that? Maybe something like that, or maybe... So I'm going to be adding that luxury lamp right there. Now it is not exactly simple, which I mentioned earlier, but I think it looks good, and that's what matters. So let me add it right there. It's way too large for now, so I'm going to have to scale it down in the X and the Y axis to make it thinner. I think that should be good. Let me move it a little to the corner, something like that. It should be tucked away, it should not be in the way of anything. I think that should be good. And now let's finally add the plants, and then we can move on to the next step, which is going to be the lighting. So I'm going to add that. I think that looks pretty good. Weeping Willow, let me just scale it up and maybe position it. Where should we position it? Maybe something like that. Let's hope that we have some space. Oops. Yeah, I hope it's not intersecting. It is intersecting with the wall. So I'm gonna have to move it slightly there, so that it's not intersecting. And I think it looks a little bit too crowded. Let me just scale it down in the X and the Y axis so that it becomes thinner. And I think that should be good. I think we should be good to go. Maybe we can add a plant right there, but I don't think we need to add it right now. I think it looks way too busy. So yeah, let's first begin with the lighting, and then obviously we can make tweaks later on. So we're gonna be adding more stuff if you want. But yeah, let's begin with the lighting. All right, so for the lighting, firstly, I'm just gonna go to my render properties. Let's switch to cycles, and device, I'm gonna set it to GPU compute because I have a GPU. If you don't have a GPU, then you can set it to CPU as well. All right, now let's go down to my environment. In my world properties. I don't know why I keep calling this environment properties, but yeah, world properties. And then we can just set this color to black so that we don't have any light in our scene right now. And I'm just going to go to the rendered view. Right now it's going to be completely black. I mean, it should be completely black. Okay, so we do have a lamp right there, so that's why it's not black. But otherwise we don't have any other light, right? So what I'm going to do for that is that I'm going to be creating a window. So I'm just going to select this cube, and I'm going to go into my edit mode. And then I can just simply inset this by pressing I, something like that. Oops. And I'm going to press GZ, move it up slightly, scale it down, and then maybe move it right there in the x-axis, scale it up, something like that should be fine. Right, so this window is coming pretty close to our this table lamp, this not table lamp, this working table. However, I think it should be fine. Now what we can do is that we can simply extrude this out by pressing E, extrude it out, something like that, extrude it again. This time I'm going to press S on my keyboard to scale it up. You can scale it up slightly, and then we can simply delete this face. So now what we just did was that we basically created this 3D look to we gave this 3D look to our, what do you call it, our window. Otherwise it would have just looked flat and that would look pretty weird. So I think it looks fine now.